इस महामंत्र का जाप करो, भवजल से मिले किनारा। नमो अरिहंताणं, नमो सिद्धाणं, नमो आयर्याणं, नमो उवच्छायाणं, नमो लोये सव्वसाहुणं। एसो पञ्चणमुक्कारो सव्वपावपणासनो, मङ्गलानं चे सव्वेसि परमं हवै मङ्गलम्।
Pranam, Jai Janendra. Welcome everybody. We'll start with the pratna and then carry on with today's subject. I hope you find this quite interesting. I'm going to ask you all to engage with the questions that I am raising for this particular session and trying to introduce a concept that is very important in Jainism as you go deeper into the codes of understanding and spirituality. You will find that this particular subject matter comes up and raises particular questions in individuals' minds, and around which a lot of the learning and principles are based on. So let's start with the prayer. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Utsayanam, Namo Loye Sabbha Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabbha Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarasura Surendra Mahito Virmuda Sansrita Virena Bhiyata Swakarma Nichayo Viraya Nityam Namah. Vira Tirthamidam Pravuttamatulam Vira Shighoram Tapo Vire Sri Truti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Virabhadram Disa Anguthe Amrutavase Laptitana Bhandar Sri Guru Gautam Samariye Manavanchita Fadadatar. Let me get my slides ready. Give me a minute. Hope you can see my slides, everybody.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kavit. Just leaving that for a minute for you to read and reflect. We continue with the text Updesh Prasad. I've selected a different story from a different part of the text. It is from the same main topic of the 12 vows of a Jain Shravak. And this is just a summary of what I've discussed before about the origin of this particular text, Updesh Prasad, composed by Param Pujya Acharya Sri Vijay Lakshmi Suri. And it has got 360 discourses, but a lot of stories. And it's a treat to really read and digest this text. And you could spend a few years just reading and rereading this. Today's story is from the discourses on the 12 vows of a Jain Shravak householder, but in particular the 7th vow. Again, just a reminder of the 12 vows. There are 5 anuvrats, the 5 minor vows of a Jain householder, as opposed to that of a Jain monk, whose vows are a monk's and a nun's vows are Mahavrat, meaning they are much, much greater than this minuscule vows that householders take. Then to make the 5 anuvrats a bit stronger and to enhance them, there are 3 gunuvrats that highlight and give some strength to the anuvrats. And then there are 4 sikshavrats. Today we are going to just discuss one of the 3 gunuvrats. Again, just to remind people, the 5 anuvrats: Ahimsa anuvrat, Sthul, Pranatipat, Virmanuvrat, meaning do not kill and avoid harm to any life which is obviously alive, meaning trust something that is moving. So it's very clear that this is life. That life which has not done you any harm. So there is freedom to protect yourself. And the Gujarati text is Nirapradi Tras Jivne Marwani Buddhi Marune, meaning that if the vow doesn't break, if accidentally some life is harmed. The second vow is the vow of avoiding speaking untruth or giving lies. But again, this is limited to major lies as far as the vow is concerned. But obviously, it's not encouraging you to be untruthful about anything. Avoid stealing, Sthul Adatadan Virmanuvrat. Fourth is restriction in your sexual desires and activity. The fifth one is limiting your possessions, Parigraha Pariman Vrat. Now, the 3 Gunuvrats are interesting. We won't go into the details of them because there is quite a lot that many of you may not have come across there in these 3 vows. And the reasons of why these vows are important can involve going quite deep into Jainism and going deeper into what it is to actually limit yourselves and why limits are important. So the 6th Gunvrat or the first Gunvrat or the 6th vow is Disa Pariman Vrat. So the vow is to limit travel in various directions. So Jain Shravak who might take this vow says, I will go no more than 2000 mile east, 2000 mile west, 4000 mile north, 5000 mile south, and I will travel only this much up in space or this deep down in the oceans, deep in the oceans. So laying limits to how far, and it can be modified into which countries you would travel to, which countries you may not travel to. And there is a reason for this vow, which will come to at some stage in the future. The 7th vow is Bhog Upbhog Pariman Vrat. Vow to limit the use of things that one consumes once, that is Bhog. So you consume, say, food and things once and then it is gone. But Upbhog is things that we consume again and again, like our clothes, our cars, our buildings, those kinds of things that one consumes again and again. So putting a limit to those, but also choosing what certain things that you would consume. And it also involves in the atichar of this particular vow is what kind of businesses you run, what kind of activities that you do to make a living, and all those things are clearly described. And it's those aspects of what businesses one does that today's story is about. The eighth vow, or the third gun vrat, is anarth dand parihar vrat, meaning you limit or avoid activities that are not essential, meaning these activities which are not essential to daily uh, life, in terms of earning your living, in terms of sustaining your household, in sustaining your um income, your food intake, maintaining your family, those kinds of things. But these are activities which are not essential to any of these, because these activities will use up your punya that you may have accumulated in your previous life and cause accumulation of pap. So that is why they are called anarth dand, meaning without meaning. Unearth means without any particular importance or relevance. Anarth dand. Dand means to punish. So it is limiting those activities which unnecessarily will punish you in the future, because these are activities of entertainment. They are not of particular benefit to the soul, and they are the cause of you accumulating pap for no real gain. So the eighth vow is about anarth dand parihar vrat. Now, the seventh vow, Bhog Upbhog Pariman Vrat, vow to limit the use of things one consumes once and those one consumes again and again. Now, we'll go back to something that you probably heard during the Savansari Pratikraman that you last did, and would have heard this on an annual basis. But I'm just reminding you some of the words that you probably heard, but not necessarily focused on. I'm just going to repeat those words in Gujarati. This is from the Atichar that is recited in Gujarati during the Savansari Pratikraman, and also in the Pratikraman that one does every fortnight, and the one that is done every 4 months. So Pakshik Pratikraman, Chaumasi Pratikraman, and Savansari Pratikraman. Most of us would have only heard it during the Savansari Pratikraman or during Parishan during the Chaudas Pratikraman that occurs once during Paryushan. It's just a short chapter, so I'll read it all so that you have some idea. सात में भोग उपभोग विरमण व्रते भोजन आश्रयी पांच अतिचार અને કર્મ હુંતી 15 અતિચાર એવં 20 અતિચાર સચિત બડી બદે સચિત નિયમ લીધે અધિક સચિત લીધું અપકવાર દુપકવાર તુચ્છ ઔષધિપણું ભક્ષણ કીધું. Now this is all about the vows one takes about limiting the amount of certain things that one eats. So I won't go into the details of that. The second part, which is relevant to today's topic, तथा कर्मत पन्नर कर्मादान इंगाल कमे वाण कमे साड़ी कमे भाड़ी कमे फोड़ी कमे ए 5 कर्म. Again, just try and digest the words, but don't worry about the meaning today, because we are not going into the details of that. केस वाणिज्य विश्व वाणिज्य sorry दंत वाणिज्य लख वाणिज्य रस वाणिज्य केस वाणिज्य विस वाणिज्य. वाणिज्य is business, trade. Vanijya, vanya, vanijya means you perform a business, and these are the things that one would use to trade in. So again, being careful that this particular trades are considered to be violent and harmful. And there is a lot, as I said, in this particular vow for us to understand, but we won't go into the details of that. So Dant Vanijya, Lakh Vanijya, Ras Vanijya, Kes Vanijya, Vis Vanijya. Now, today's story is about one of those trades and why it's important. Dant Vanijya is about trading in elephant tusks, in animals, in birds, in um, leather goods, in other things that are obtained from animals. So it's those kinds of trades, and saying, okay, even if you don't kill these animals for trading yourself, but if you are trading in that, and if you are paying a good price, then that would encourage other people to actually uh, promote that trade and go and kill those animals again. Laksha Vanijya, લાખ વગેરે હિંસક વસ્તુઓનો વ્યાપાર. So those things which are made out of things and the process involves a lot of violence, you would avoid trading in those. Ras Vanijya. Ras Vanijya is mad is honey, Madira is alcohol, Mas is meat, માખણ, દૂધ, દહીં, ઘી અને તેલ વગેરે રસ પદાર્થોનો વ્યાપાર કરવો તે. It says that one should try and avoid trading in any of this. For all of us, meat and alcohol is simple enough and clear enough, but we may struggle with the idea of trading in makhan, doodh, dahi, ghee, and there are reasons for it. Not that they are forbidden to consume, but in terms of trading, one needs to be extra careful to avoid harm to other living things in those trades. Because storage of things like ghee does encourage other life to actually be developed in those containers, and those are sort of explained in quite a lot of detail. Again, we won't go into the details of that. Today's story is about two traders. I'm just going to ask you to try and look at these three questions, because the lesson that we are going to learn from this story is not directly related to the story itself, but it brings out an important concept that is, to me, quite important to understand and to digest. How does a Shravak, Shravika judge the respect due to these two traders? I'll tell you the story in a minute. So the question is, how does a Shravak, Shravika judge the respect due to these two traders? The Shravika makes a judgment. What does she do to demonstrate this? So I want you to remember that part of that story. And why is this value judgment and appropriate action important? So just those three questions I'd like you to understand. Just remember the words. You don't know the context, so you may not connect it right now, but I'll bring back the slide up later on. Okay, so let's go into the story itself. There are two traders who were resident in the same city, and once, as part of their trade, meaning they would go to another place to buy the goods that they were trading in and bring them back, and then sell them at a profit later on. So they both lived in the same city, and just before the rainy season, they are on the road to go to another place, and on the way they stop at the house of a Shravika, meaning a Jain lady householder, and stop at her place to have a meal. And that was fairly common. You may not know anybody, but anybody who comes to your door is an atithi, and atithi devo bhava, meaning you would respect them as very respected guests and treat them royally and honorably. So the Shravika welcomes them and asks them. It was obvious that they were both traders and they were on their way. She must be along the trading routes and would have uh, looked after guests along the road often. So she asks these two traders, "What sort of things do you trade in?" So the two say that, "Oh, mother, one of us is a trader in ghee, and the other one trades in leathers. So he acquires leather and sells them for whatever one makes out of leather. And we are both on our way to buy our respective stock so that we can then sell it later on." The Shravika thinks about what they've told her, and she gives it very considered thought. So she decides how to treat them, and she invites the trader who is selling ghee inside her house, treats him with respect, lets him sit under a shade inside the house on Chandarwo. So in those days, you are sitting in a nice place with a kind of a decent roof so that things don't fall from the top. And she treats him with that respect, makes him sit there and serves him food. And the trader who is going to buy leather, she sits him outside in the open and serves him food there. Neither the ghee trader nor the leather trader seem to mind this particular kind of action, and they are both happy with the way she has treated them. And they finish their meal, stay the night, and are on their way the next day. On the way back, after having bought their goods that they had gone to buy, they come back on the same path to go back to their own town. And along the way, they stop at the same Shravika's house. And the Shravika now knows them and understands what they've done in terms of their trading activity. But this time round, she calls in the leather trader inside the house, treats him with respect, and makes him sit in the same place that the ghee trader was given during the journey outwards. And the ghee trader, she sits outside this time, out in the open, and serves him his food there. So this time round, the ghee trader is a bit upset. He says he's being disrespected, he's thinking about that, and he asks the Shravika the question and tells her that you treated us both appropriately when we went out and we visited your house on our way to our purchases. On our way back, you have treated us in exactly the opposite way, and I find that a bit insulting. The leather trader seems to agree with this. So the question is, why has she treated these two differently? And what is the principle behind her actions? She's very wise, she's very learned, and she knows her conduct and what dharma prescribes very, very well. Anybody with an answer? How does a Shravak Shravika judge and respect due to these two traders? What does she do to demonstrate this? This is obvious. So let's try and answer these two questions. Anybody? Is the story making sense? It's obvious that she's treated them differently after knowing what they do. No? Okay. Let me explain. જમવાને અવસરે શ્રાવિકાએ તેમને પ્રથમ કરતા ઉલટી રીતે બેસાડ્યા. એટલે ઘીના વ્યાપારીને બહાર અને ચર્મના વ્યાપારીને ઘરની અંદર બેસાડ્યો. ઘીના વ્યાપારીથી આ સહન ન થયું. એણે તરત પૂછ્યું, માતા, પ્રથમ તમે જે અમારી બેઠક કરી હતી તે યોગ્ય હતી, કારણ કે મને ઘીના વ્યાપારીને ઘરમાં બેસાડ્યો હતો. તે ઉત્તમ વ્યાપારને લીધે યોગ્ય હતું. The ghee trader thinks that what you did when we left the first time, when we came to you the first time, you entertained me and served me a meal inside the house because I am the trader in ghee, which is considered to be a respectable trade and which is due more respect than the leather trader, which is considered to be a not so respectable trade. So that was appropriate that you treated me with more respect and called me inside the house. And you treated the leather trader with less respect and served him outside the house. And the leather trader is also there looking on, and he agrees. He says, yes, you're right. My trade is less respectable than the ghee traders. So he's right that you treated us appropriately, so we didn't mind. But this time you reverse this. Why is that? So the Shravika says, He says, listen, sons, this trader of ghee, at the moment, his mindset is not virtuous. At the moment, his mindset would suggest that there are thoughts going on in his mind, because that would cause more harm, and his desire is to make more profit. How would he make more profit? So she says, he is thinking, okay, if ghee becomes more expensive, then I will make more profit. He has bought the ghee from wherever he went at a certain price. Now he's wishing that if the ghee becomes more expensive, then I would make more money. But if the ghee was cheaper, then he wouldn't make so much money. What would make ghee more expensive? Ghee would become more expensive only if there is a shortage of ghee. Shortage of ghee would occur if there was a drought and there wasn't enough grass on which the cows would feed and produce more milk. Therefore, in his desire to make more profit, his mindset is wishing basically that there is a drought now that I bought my ghee, that there isn't a lot of grass that grows, that the cows are not fed very well, and therefore ghee will become more scarce. Therefore, what I have bought and collected will become more expensive, will become dearer, and I'll make more money. Therefore, at the moment, his mindset is not very generous. He is greedy, and therefore he deserves less respect. On the way out, his mindset was opposite, because he was going to buy ghee. His mindset was that I hope that there is a lot of rain, that there is plenty of grass for the cows to feed on, that they produce a lot of milk, and therefore there'll be a lot of ghee for me to buy. And because there will be abundance of ghee, it would be cheaper for me to buy. Therefore, on the way out, while he was going to buy, his mindset was generous, he was benevolent, therefore he deserved more respect. That is why I treated him inside the house. I served him food there because he was due more respect. His mindset would have been such that was more positive, more benevolent, more generous, and considering the welfare of the animals and everybody around. So his mindset was not tainted by greed. On the way out as well, the opposite mindset would have in that of the leather trader. He would have thought that if there is a lot of rain and there is a lot of grass, not many animals will die. Therefore, as I'm going to buy, leather will be more expensive for me to buy. So on the way out, his wish was that maybe it would be to my benefit if there was a drought, if there wasn't a lot of grass, there more animals would die, and therefore there would be more leather for me to buy. Therefore, the leather would be cheaper for me to buy. Now, on the way out, his mindset is reversed. He is now thinking that if there is a lot of rain, there is a lot of grass, there will be plenty of food for the animals to feed on. Therefore, there won't be many animals dying. Therefore, leather will become more expensive and I will make more profit. So just by virtue of him wanting to make more profit, his mindset is more benevolent and more generous. Therefore, because of his mindset would be like that, I've given him a different kind of respect. I've entertained him at inside the house. And she tells them that I am a Shravika. I do not pay respect to anybody who does not have the virtues. So I treat people with virtues and I treat them appropriately. That is what my dharma is, what my function is. And I also must be careful that I give appropriate level of respect to the appropriate level of virtue in different people. ગુણી વિના હું શ્રાવિકા છું, ગુણી વિના બીજાને માન આપતી નથી, તેથી જ મેં આ પ્રમાણે કર્યું છે. Now, this was an eye-opener to the two traders, and they both started thinking that the way the Shravika is evaluating what we are doing in our lives on a day-to-day basis and what the kinds of trades that we are involved in, and she's absolutely right about our mindset, and this happens every time we go out to buy. On the way out to buy, we have different mindsets. We are thinking that our goods will be cheaper to buy, and on our way back, we are constantly thinking that our goods would become more expensive so that we can sell them at a greater profit. And they realize this, and they realize that the kind of trades that they're engaged in and the kind of mindsets that encourages is something that they should think about changing. And they both give up their respective trade and find something different which does not involve this kind of variation in the mindsets, so that they are more benevolent more of the time. Now, this was the basic story. I've recited this story in the other classes a couple of times over the years, but I've never tried to extract this particular learning that we are going to go into a bit of depth with today. What I'd like you to reflect on is the first question: how does Shravak Shravika judge the respect due to these two traders that we have gone into and understood? What does she do to demonstrate this? She does that very clearly and very well, and also gives the two traders an explanation of why she did what she did and what was the very important spiritual reason behind that. What I wanted to try and tease out today is, why is this kind of value judgment and appropriate action to that particular value important? Anybody? So the second bullet point is discuss. That's what I'm waiting for. I know the class is not interactive, but can somebody put something down on the chat? How does she know they're thinking? Okay. Bijal. Because she's wise, she's very thoughtful, she's probably very skilled at reading faces and understanding what's going on in people's mind. She probably knows the times very well of how read his work and think she's a knowledgeable woman that I said at the beginning. And it is not difficult. Those of you who are in different kinds of businesses or activities are probably all used to try understanding the people you interact with and making judgments about what they might be thinking. If you are a successful uh, businessman, or if you are a successful executive somewhere, you're doing this on a day-to-day basis. And she is very skilled at that, I would think. She's not reading their minds, but she is basically surmising quite rightly and effectively and demonstrates that to them. So that's to answer your question, Bijal. But I'm waiting for the answer to that other question. Why is this value judgment and appropriate action important? What does that kind of understanding tell you about the principles behind this? Okay. Let me tell you another story from the life of Bhagwan Rishabdev, Bharat Chakravarti, and Bhagwan Mahavir that you probably heard at some stage, uh, but may not have thought about it in the same way that we are trying to understand it today. You probably all remember that the first Tirthankar, Bhagwan Rishabdev, had 100 sons and 2 daughters. His eldest son, Bharat, was a Chakravarti, meaning he was the emperor of the 6 continents. And he had a son called Marichi. Marichi was the soul of Bhagwan Mahavir, and this was his third life after having achieved Samyaktva. Marichi once becomes quite detached from worldly life and becomes a monk with under the guidance of Bhagwan Rushabdev, and follows the 4 great vows, the 5 great vows at that time, and is very diligent in that. However, over the years, he once becomes quite ill and begins to suffer a lot and needs help from people to look after him. And while he is suffering from this illness and he slowly gets better, he begins to think that the life of a Jain ascetic, a Jain monk, is actually very hard, and that he would find it quite difficult to actually carry on with the 5 great vows in the way that they were prescribed. And he, in his mind, accepts the idea that he needs some less restrictions and a bit more freedom. He completely clearly understands the value of the 5 great vows, but he is also thinking that he personally does not have the capacity to follow them in the way that they should be. So he needs a bit more comfort. So he begins to take liberties with the clothes he wears, with the protection that he has on his feet and on his head with an umbrella. And he as symbolically and for greater comfort, he adopts uh, certain things, and he very clearly and deliberately adopts them and tells people that I'm doing this because I'm not capable of following that great path which Bhagwan Rushabdev has prescribed, and that is the greatest path. My way is a diversion, and it is a lesser path. And he demonstrates that in everything that he does. And the kind of dress code that he adopts is called that of a Tridandi. So he becomes a Tridandi uh, sadhu. He's not a Nirgranth Muni. He's not following the five great vows. And he carries on his life in that respect with those freedoms. And whenever people come to him and he teaches them what the true path is, every time he has somebody who has understood and wants to further uh, their spiritual life by following a greater path, and they ask him what to do, he sends them to Bhagwan Rushabdev and tells them that you should follow what Bhagwan Rushabdev is teaching, because mine is a lesser path, and that is the best path. So he does that on a regular basis until once he becomes ill again, and there are some shishyas. Sorry, the first part of the story, he just found it difficult. He wasn't actually ill. So sorry, my apologies. I'm mixing things up. The first part of the story, he just finds it difficult and he adopts this different three-dandi uh, route with those liberties that he takes. This was just out of being not strong enough to follow the five vows. It wasn't because he was ill. After a few years of this, he does actually become ill, and then he is in need of help from Sishyas, and Sishyas keep on coming to him, helping him, and then whenever they are ready, he teaches them more and tells them to go to Bhagwan Rishabdev to follow their higher path again. And he does that for a long time until once he actually begins to think that if I carry on sending all my disciples to Bhagwan Rishabdev, there is not going to be anybody who follows me and anybody who will look after me when I get older, because I won't have any sishyas, I won't have any followers. So once a particularly difficult disciple comes along and he finally convinces him that he needs to follow a higher path, a different path, but this Sishya asks him that you're telling me to go to Bhagwan Rishabdev. If that is where the true dharma is, you're saying that there is dharma there. Do you, in what you're doing, are you not following dharma? So Marichi thinks about this and says, look, if I send him away as well, there won't be anybody to follow me. So he makes one simple statement. Okay, there is dharma there and there is dharma here as well, knowing full well that the two are not equivalent, that the value that would be placed on a Panch Mahavratdhari sadhu and his life should definitely be much higher than the path that he was following. So dharma and the right path and the highest path cannot exist in what I am doing. It does exist in what Bhagwan Rushabdev is preaching and the path that his munis are following. So he made a wrong statement which was against the teaching, and the writing is that that extended his particular life towards for 24 more lives until he becomes Bhagwan Mahavir, and that extends his life after that. So if you read about his other lives after Marichi's life, there are many, many lives where he goes a bit up and then down, a bit up and then down, and that follows a pattern, and mainly because of his lack of judgment, his lack of his greed for a Sishya, and his greed for and his untruth statement that there is dharma there and there is dharma here. Now, that is a parallel story in the life of Marichi, who in his 20s, in further lives, he becomes Bhagwan Mahavir in the 27th life, our last Tirthankar, and under whose sasan we are currently living. The incident that we are talking about today happens when one day Bharat Chakravarti goes to Bhagwan Rushabdev to bow down to him, and in the Samvasran asks him that, Bhagwan, is there any soul currently alive that we know of where we are who will become a Tirthankar in the future? And Bhagwan Rushabdev tells him that your son Marichi is going to be a Vasudev, Tirprusht Vasudev, is also going to be a Chakravarti like you, and he is going to be the 24th Tirthankar of this particular Chovisi time cycle. So Chakravarti Bharat is overjoyed at this, and he goes out to meet Marichi and says to him with hands bowed, and says to him that I bow down to you, but not in your current garb or your current position, because you are no longer a Muni. You are a Tridandi sadhu who has taken liberties. Therefore, I am not paying you respect as a Tridandi, because I respect the higher path. I bow down to Panch Mahavratdari Nirgranth Munis and sadhus and sadhvis only. I do not bow down to somebody following a lesser path, and you are following a lesser path. But Bhagwan Rushabdev has told me that you are going to be the 24th Tirthankar, and he also tells him that you are going to be a Vasudev, you are going to be a Chakravarti, and you're going to be the 24th Tirthankar. So I am bowing down to you as your future incarnation as the 24th Tirthankar. And that is why I'm paying respect to you. I'm not paying respect to you in this current garb, in this current vesh that you have of a Tridandi sadhu. Now, the story also goes that on hearing this, Marichi is overjoyed. And some of you might have seen the pictures that are depicted of this particular incident. He dances up in joy and says, my kud, or my once, or my lineage is so great that my grandfather is the first Tirthankar. My father is the first Chakravarti. And I will be a Vasudev, I'll be a Chakravarti, and I'll also be a Tirthankar in my future lives. So my kud, or my lineage, my family is such great that he takes extreme pride in his particular status and his position. And as a result of that pride, he binds a karma called Nich Gotra karma. And as we hear every year in Paryushan, that Nishgotra karma comes into fruition, whatever part of it that was left after him having got rid of most of it in the other lives, he was left with about 3 months worth of it. And it was an unusual event that a Tirthankar is never reborn in the household except that of a Kshatriya of the ruling class, but he is conceived and spends the first 3 months of his garbhvas, that is the fetal life, in the womb of a Brahmin lady. And then the Devs transfer the uh, fetus to the womb of Trishla Mata. And that was as a result of this particular Nich Gotra karma that he had acquired, taking pride in his lineage. And that is the story. Any thoughts and comments? So basically, what we are talking about today is the value of virtue and according due respect to virtue. Both these stories illustrate that this concept is important, that when one is making a value judgment, one needs to understand what is behind the virtues that one is actually valuing above others, which we may not give the same amount of respect to. Okay. It's short. It's 9 o'clock now. What I wanted to do was leave you with a concept, and I'm hoping that this will generate some thoughts and debate. Any questions? Okay, so Bijal, you're answering the question because she is still doing her dharma as Shravika by feeding them, but lets them know what appropriate thinking on their part by making the differentiation of giving them respect according to their mindset. Yes, right. It's important in that respect. But why is Jainism, we talk about the equality of all life? We say that ultimately all living beings, whatever their form, one sense, two sense, three sense, four sense, five sense, animal, human, devlok, narak, the soul is the same and has the ultimate potential of becoming a siddh. If that potential is recognized in every soul, then this idea of giving due respect to a person in that particular form or in that particular position that they are in based on their virtues is important, because we make value judgments all the time. And if you value goodness and demonstrate that, then it is obviously emphasizing our thinking and the fact that we are recognizing something better than the other part that we may be seeing. So we make value judgments all the time, but value judgments based on true virtues of the soul, what is good and beneficial and benevolent to that other life forms and which is following the right dharma. This is what Bharat Chakravarti did when he went round to Marichi to bow down to him. This is what this Shravika is doing when entertaining the ghee trader and the leather trader. it is important for us to understand and remember whether we do that and we recognize virtue in people, and whether we value them appropriately. Okay. Any questions? Kavit, you got anything?
No, I don't have. I haven't received any questions. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, mindset is very important when action is taken, Sandeep says, and this will give us our karma. Good. Okay. Okay. Any other comments? No. Okay.
I've just received something. Should the Shravika not treat both traders same despite their mindset?
Okay. So that is the whole point of this. We are growing up and we strongly believe in equality. We are constantly engaged not to be discriminatory in any form. But on the other hand, if we also treat those who are virtuous and those who are not with equal respect, what does that ultimately do to our value for respect? And what does that ultimately teach us and our children about what values to place on certain things? So if somebody is very generous and helping people all the time, and somebody who is treating people very badly, and it's not a question of whether we like and dislike either of them, but when we have to demonstrate who we value more, then should there not be a distinction between where, I mean, we subscribe to equality, but in our day-to-day life, we are always making value judgments. The point here is about making value judgments with respect to virtue, not with respect to status, not with respect to power, not with respect to how wealthy or not wealthy you are, not with respect to whether you know somebody or not, not with respect to any discrimination by virtue of race, gender, or any other differentiation which are external, but by virtue of their internal virtues. So should she be treating them both the same? What she did was demonstrate to them her thinking, which ultimately actually proved very beneficial to both of them. And they, in the times that they were living in, did not think about her differentiation between how she treated them on their way out to buy their stuff. They both thought that this was appropriate, that the trade that a ghee merchant does is obviously more respected, and the trade that a leather merchant does is less respected. So neither of them minded the fact that one was treated inside the house, the other was served food outside. And they both thought that that was appropriate. That was the times that they were living in. In our times, you're right, this would appear to be discriminatory. And if somebody tried to explain this, there would be a lot of argument. So I'm conscious of the fact that these are very difficult and different concepts from what we're used to. So thank you for that question. Shouldn't she treat them both the same? So I'll leave that question with you to mull over. Anything else?
Nothing from my side.
Okay. So we'll end the class today. I'll send over the topic for the next class. I might carry on with the same format, or we may introduce a completely different topic. If you have some particular wish to understand something else, please send an email so that we can then maybe start something different if that is the wish of a few of you. So please feedback. Thank you. I ask for forgiveness if I've said anything that is against the principles of Jain Dharma and what the great Tirthankars and our Guru Bhagwans have taught us. My apologies for the mistake I made in that story about Bharat Chakravarti and Marichi's life. Chamitukudam. Chamitukudam. Sarvamangalamanglyam Surakalyan Karanam Pradhanam Suradharmanam Jainam Jaiti Sasanam. Goodbye.